out of no. You just fly this flaming tank at your enemies and it will be lit on fire, you see. Now, when the Irish were swindled for their potatoes, and then the French came in and started stealing more potatoes in order to grow their fish, they would use these fish, again, for stealing orphans. That's right, stealing orphans. They were also feeding them, but then they'd steal them and put them to work in these tanks. Now, this was not effective, as we can see, because the Nazis lasted until at least 1875. They later came back in World War II, but that doesn't matter because they did nowhere near the kind of damage they did the first time. Now people think, oh, but didn't they try genocide? Oh yes, they tried genocide. Don't get me wrong, what they did was bad. But they did not wipe out Africa. They sank the damn place. It was gone. No. A lot of people don't know about this. But Africa had to come back. You know the story of Atlantis? Well, that was actually Atlanta. And you came through, and Atlanta was put onto New York. You put them upside down and fit them together. Now they did this with lots and lots of helicopters. But helicopters those days weren't like the helicopters you have now. Those are too fancy. We just tied a bunch of eagles together and lifted them up. Why do you think they don't see eagles often? They were all killed moving Atlanta. Now, on to Japan. Japan was a prosperous nation. Everybody knows that Japan's technology dates back. They haven't invented a single thing since 1497. That is when they invented the flat screen TV. But you see, it is too expensive to release all this stuff. They don't have the technology or the money to get these things out of the ground to make more things. So what they do, you see, they release them when it's cost effective. Now, this angered the Irish because they wouldn't sell them for potatoes. But the Irish, that was their currency at the time, you see. They had potatoes. Now, when you took a potato and you peel it, it rots eventually. And you can't sell a rotten potato. So when your money expires after a few days, you have to spend it quickly. This jump-started the economy. Now, when this economy was jump-started by these potatoes, they realized that this wasn't going to work. So they decided to start selling priests. But unfortunately, as I mentioned previously, Africa swindled them out of the priests by not giving them when they sold them potatoes. Now, when these potatoes came in to Africa, shortly after, it was sunk by the Nazis. Now, this was not something that happens every day, you see. This was a big news event, but unfortunately, we didn't have news back then. We had word of mouth and carrier pigeons. Now, these carrier pigeons weren't like the carrier pigeons of today. They weren't instant. They didn't shoot them out of cannons. Now, the problem with this is, it takes about 16 years for a pigeon to get across the world, and usually they're dead. Now, this makes it very difficult because we didn't have cannonballs to put them in. Now, if you put a carrier pigeon in a cannonball, it can't fly. And the problem with it not being able to fly is, you need it to fly, otherwise you have a walking carrier pigeon. But it can't walk because it's in a ball. Now the problem with balls are, you can't walk. You gotta roll around, and carrier pigeons cannot get across the ocean in a cannonball. So they gave up on them, right? And they started just throwing shit at people. They would put a message in a bottle and throw it at someone. And then someone would read the message and throw it onto whoever it was addressed to. These would create lines, you see, and underground railroads. Now people always think an underground railroad, isn't that where the blacks went? But no, not originally. It was a railroad underground caused when people were throwing these bottles around, they would often miss and hit the ground. Eventually, it would create this big line, you see. And they said, well, why not just build a railroad? But we didn't have trains, you see. You had to use those hand-pumped cars. And when you did that, you couldn't tie an onion to your belt. But that was in style at the time. Now trying to, you'd often get it snagged, and that would rip your legs off. And that is what's wrong with your generation.
Okay, but what was that about the onions and potatoes?
I forget.
Okay, Mom, do you ever talk about uphill and downhill? Uphill? Both ways to school, but never downhill.
Potatoes was half an hour ago.
And there was Santa Claus who was killed by Nazis and more dinosaurs. I feel like it's just dinosaurs like the babies, and then Santa Claus and the Nazis, and then the
Oh, can I help it if the Nazis killed Santa? They came to me when I was just a wee girl, and they told me that the Santa was killed, and I was like, why are you telling me this? I am not Santa. And that is when the first time I talked to the Nazis. They were not nice people, they killed Santa Claus.
what about the Jewish?
Oh, they killed the Jewish too, but that wasn't until later. That was far after they sank Africa, killed Santa Claus. They did lots of horrible things.
Which came first, Santa or Africa?
Well, Santa! It was their first act of war. Santa was flying down from the North Pole. Only in those days, the North Pole was the South Pole, and Santa lived on the equator. Now, people don't know why he was flying from the North Pole. I'm not even sure. I think he was testing a spy plane. But the government won't tell you that because of too many dinosaurs. They were flying all around. They had to shoot them down with a slingshot. But in those days, slingshot, again, were made by the Spanish. And the Spanish shot swords.
And
You
rape.
see, yes, the Spanish were filled with sodomizing rape using these swords. It's just the way they worked. Now, a lot of people will tell you, well, that's just not true, but the thing is, history is written by the victors. And when the victors say, fuck this is lame, they just write it all completely new and talk about Columbus. But Columbus wasn't real. You guys just don't understand.